In September 1940, a man in Warsaw made a decision that no one, not before, not since, has ever voluntarily made. He asked to be arrested, not by his own government, not by a court, by the Gestapo. He stood on a Warsaw street during a Nazi roundup, allowed himself to be swept up, and was sent to Auschwitz, the camp that was, at that moment, just beginning to become the most lethal place on earth. His name was Witold Pilecki. He was 39 years old. He had a wife, 2 children, a farm, and a cavalry commission. He gave all of it up on purpose, because someone had to go in and find out what was happening inside, and no one else would volunteer. Before the war, Witold Pilecki was a cavalry officer and a country gentleman. He was born in 1901 in the Polish borderlands, the son of a family that had survived Russian occupation, Siberian exile, and the long erasure of Polish identity that comes with being a subject people. He was a painter, he raised horses, he had a small estate in the northeast of Poland, and he married a woman named Maria in 1931. They had 2 children, Andrzej and Zofia. He took his commission in the Polish Army Reserves seriously, but Poland was at peace in the early 30s, and the cavalry was still a cavalry. Men still rode horses in 1939. He was not a professional soldier waiting for a war. He was a husband and a father and a farmer. Everything he was about to do, he chose. Germany invaded from the west on the 1st of September 1939. 17 days later, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Poland disappeared in 18 days. The government fled, the army dissolved. Warsaw fell under German occupation in early October. Pilecki did not flee. Within weeks of the surrender, he helped form one of the first Polish underground resistance organizations, the Secret Polish Army. By the end of 1939, he was an active underground operative in occupied Warsaw. And then, in early 1940, reports began to reach the resistance. There was a camp, 40 kilometers west of Krakow, built on the site of a former Polish army barracks. The Germans were sending Polish officers there, political prisoners, intellectuals. Almost no information was coming back out. Pilecki proposed something that no one had proposed before. Someone should volunteer to be sent in. On September 19, 1940, Witold Pilecki walked into a street roundup. The Germans called these operations łapanki, street sweeps where occupying forces would cordon off a city block and take everyone. No charges, no names, just bodies. Pilecki carried false papers. His name, according to those papers, was Tomasz Serafiński. He allowed himself to be swept up, loaded onto a truck, and taken to the Gestapo assembly point. 2 days later, he arrived at Auschwitz. The camp held about 7,000 prisoners when Pilecki arrived. It would hold 90,000 before the war ended. His prisoner number was 4859. He was beaten on arrival, as all prisoners were beaten on arrival, and assigned to a labor detail. He did not reveal who he was. He began to build. In the camps, information was the most dangerous currency. Pilecki used it carefully. Over months, he identified other prisoners, officers, educators, underground operatives who had not yet been broken. He built a cell network, 5 men per cell. No cell knew the others existed. Classic underground tradecraft, running inside the most surveilled place in occupied Europe. He called it the Związek Organizacji Wojskowej, the Military Organization Union, ZOW. By 1942, it had several hundred members. They shared food with the sick. They protected the most vulnerable prisoners from the worst guards. They gathered information about the camp's layout, its capacity, its methods. And they sent reports out. Prisoners released from Auschwitz, there were some, in the early years, would carry Pilecki's messages sewn into clothing. Escaped prisoners carried detailed written accounts. 3 of Pilecki's reports reached the Polish government in exile in London. The first described mass starvation and systematic killing of prisoners. The second, written in 1942, described something new: the construction of new facilities at Auschwitz. Gas chambers, facilities specifically designed for systematic mass murder. This was not rumor, this was eyewitness reporting from inside the camp, written by a trained intelligence officer. He asked for one thing: Allied airstrikes on the rail lines leading to Auschwitz, or a commando raid, or weapons dropped inside so the prisoners could liberate themselves. The reports reached London. The British War Office received Pilecki's reports in 1942. The Polish government in exile confirmed their authenticity. This was not, it should be said, the only information the Allies had about what was happening at Auschwitz. There were other reports, other sources, other testimonies. The standard historical explanation is that the reports were too extreme to believe, that the scale of industrial killing was so far outside any previous human experience that it simply seemed impossible. Pilecki did not accept this. He understood that the reports had arrived. He understood they had been read. He had been inside Auschwitz for over 2 years. He had watched the camp transform from a brutal detention facility into something for which no existing word had yet been invented. He decided to escape, not to save himself, but to deliver his reports in person and force someone to listen. On the night of April 26, 1943, Pilecki and 2 other prisoners escaped from the Auschwitz bakery, where they had arranged a night shift. They broke a window. They cut a telephone wire. They walked out. They were in the middle of occupied southern Poland, wearing prison clothing, with no papers, no money, and no weapons. It took them several weeks to reach Warsaw. When Pilecki's written account reached the Polish Underground Command, it caused a serious disruption. The full scale of the Auschwitz operation, the gas chambers, the crematoria, the daily murder rate, was now in a document. Documented and unavoidable, the commander of the Polish Home Army transmitted Pilecki's account to London. Again, nothing. In August 1944, Pilecki fought in the Warsaw Uprising, the largest single resistance operation of the war. The Polish underground rose against German occupation and held the capital for 63 days before being crushed. He survived. In 1945, he was sent to Italy on an intelligence assignment. He could have stayed. He came back. After the war, Poland did not go free. The Soviet Union installed a communist government in Warsaw. The underground officers who had fought the Germans, the men and women of the Home Army, were now considered enemies of the new state. In May 1947, Witold Pilecki was arrested by the communist security forces. He was 46 years old. What happened in the interrogation rooms of the Ministry of Public Security has been partially reconstructed from survivors' accounts. He was tortured for months. In letters to his family, smuggled out at extraordinary risk, he wrote that what the Gestapo had done to him was, and these are his words, child's play compared to what the Communist Security Service did. He was charged with espionage, illegal border crossing, carrying weapons. He was tried in a closed court. On May 25, 1948, Witold Pilecki was executed by a single shot to the back of the head in Mokotów prison in Warsaw. He was 47 years old. Poland's communist government suppressed his name for 40 years. He was not spoken of. His file was classified. His family was warned to stay silent. In 1990, the Polish Republic rehabilitated Witold Pilecki. In 2006, he received the Order of the White Eagle, Poland's highest state honor, awarded posthumously. His report from inside Auschwitz, written in 1942, is preserved in the Pilecki Institute archives in Warsaw. It begins with a prisoner number, 4859, and it describes what a man can do when he decides to go where no one else will go.